Welcome to the final free practice session of the season, the final Endurance Cup round tomorrow, Sunday, the 1st of October. But the rain in Spain, John Watson, falls mainly on the circuit. It's only started in the last 10 minutes or so. Little flurry of rain. The drivers have been told wet track conditions. And there we have it. Humidity has really risen through the course today. Little flash of sunshine earlier in the day. It's just been a grey day. But, well, he's got his brolly and he did well to bring it with him.
Yes, and after what might have been a fairly uneventful session earlier in the morning, when track conditions were dry, but clearly ambient temperatures were lower, track temperatures were lower, the track was green, and on it goes. Now, they're going to have to go out and actually show that they are professional drivers on this 4.6 kilometre, 16 corner Circuit de Catalunya circuit. And well, it'll be an interesting period, an hour and a half before the checkered flag comes out. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise, because weather forecast for Sunday morning is there's a good possibility it may be wet. This isn't wet, this is just the circuit is damp, but it may well be wet for qualifying, that 1 hour qualifying session.
Yeah, well, there's the championship. Overall, the Blancpain GT Series, Mirko Bortolotti, Christian Engelhardt, GRT, Lamborghini racers well clear, but Vincent Abril in the number 8 Bentley can topple them in the overall championship running. Nobody else can. Maxi Poot from Pereira close, but not close enough. So it's a 2-horse battle for the overall honours. That's across all 10 rounds, the 5 sprint rounds, and now this is the 5th and final Endurance Cup round. So looking very, very strong for the 63 Lamborghini crew. But don't forget, they won the first 2 races of the season, looking really good, but it's way closer than that, of course. And in fact, in the Endurance Series, it's the Bentley boys in front, Soucek, Soule and Abril, and then again that 63 Lamborghini challenging in second place. This race also a 2-horse race for the title honours. Grey conditions here. We had the dry running this morning, and if you had a Mercedes, you were going to be very well placed, because they really came on very strong. ACA ASP filling the top 3 places, and the 4th of their cars in the Pro-Am class with Badi, Perfetti and Bastian, 8th overall. Yeah. So really strong. 87 really well in the hands of Gounon, and he's using those hands. In fact, who's on board?
Is he on 6? Because it's not wet enough, in my view, as we're looking at it, but may not take long before he has got to go back into the pits. And if he's not on wet weather tires, get them on. But that is just an indication, as the racetrack has had a number of events, practice and race for the support here this weekend. Going the long way around the corner in these conditions normally is the better route, because the track, while it is dirtier, hasn't got quite the build-up of rubber that the racing line would clearly have. Yeah, well, Jules Gounon, that was a massive twitch, and just as you were talking there, we saw some more from Jules. He may be revising his opinion, or maybe the opinion is that it will be drying out as the cars go around. We can't tell through our tinted commentary box windows if it's still raining, but the spray coming out of the curbing, so it's rained more than we realised. The rain is that very fine, sort of misty style of rain, but Jules Gounon brimming with confidence coming out of turn 9. He ran the curb, you could see the spray being kicked up. We saw him between the 2 sessions, just at lunch break, and he was on the balls of his feet, showing that confidence that only youth can illustrate. Again, you can see all the curbing now is wet, so you ideally do not want to venture onto it, because that will be a bigger problem than staying on the black stuff, which will offer up an element of grip. But paint and water and rubber, well, an alchemist couldn't think of a worse balance for a racing driver.
Yeah, 3 things that will remain separate now, suitably far off the curbing there, but well, not on the way in, but not on the way out.
How rude!
Banging
it like that.
So bucking Bronco of a ride, but as you said, John, he's a driver just chock full of confidence. Not so long ago he was banging on the commentary box window, just full of himself in a nice sort of way. That pole of enthusiasm. It's 2 minutes 11.7. The best lap this morning, 1 minute 47.3.
Well, in fact, that's just been blown by the doors have been blown off it by the number 4, the Mercedes Black Falcon, and that's Adam Christodoulou, sister, not the sister car, but the number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes, 2:04, 7.6 seconds. Now, I don't know whether that car might be on a set of wets. It's still probably very marginal as to whether you get away with a set of wets until you can really see spray coming from the rear of these cars. Wow, I like that.
What a great camera angle there.
Oh, what a great...
That's turn 10, brilliant move over the curves, but just letting it drift enough, but not panicking.
Spot on. Now, you can tell that he comes from Finland, because that's what Finnish mums and dads do every morning when they're taking the little cherubs to their schools, because there it's so cold they can't walk, unlike those spoiled brats that have to be taken by their mums and people carriers and all that.
That's right. Four-wheel drive will cover all eventualities. So it's Robert Renauer top in the 911 Porsche at the moment, 2 minutes 1. So John's happy with that. But what a great lap there from Patrick Kujala. I do know why.
The reason why the Porsche's gone quick is because its engine is hanging out behind the rear wheels. It gives it really, really outstanding traction in difficult conditions. But inevitably, people will get down to that time, and in fact, many will end up eclipsing it, because these are circumstances. The track conditions are changing. As we look at the 63 Lamborghini, and the guys, Mirko Bortolotti, Christian Engelhardt, still smarting from what happened in the final qualifying run in Nürburgring, where they were caught twice by a red flag. They ended up having to start in the middle and back of the pack, and it was a crash fest for their championship perspectives in the sprint championship.
But didn't they drive well? Almost unnoticed. They worked their way up to 5th overall. Not so long ago, they were down around 20th. They just kept plugging away. But Kujala in the 77 Barwell car is being a massive sorry. Hasn't put a quick lap in, because that was his out lap when he was so leery over the curbs.
Stefano Telli, another old hand and tricky conditions in the Jaguar. 0.02 of a second slower than Adam Christodoulou. Fastest car yet again on this lap is the 911 Porsche. Currently in 4th place now, dropped down to 5th, but fastest first sector, fastest second sector. Purple, waiting to see how the final sector comes out. Where is the Porsche? We're looking at the Lamborghini as it comes round on its first flying lap, but the car that's probably going to go quickest yet again, and has done so with a 158.430, 0.8 of a second quicker than Dries van Thor in the lead Audi. First time we've seen Audi really up at the top of the timing sheets so far this weekend.
Now, 2 cars didn't complete a flying lap this morning. One of them, the 55 car with James Collado, just went up to 3rd place, became 4th, became 5th, because the times are coming down remarkably at the top end of the field. We saw Zhu Gunan earlier on. He is falling down the order after his flamboyant early laps. He's in 12th place. Patrick Kujala, when he completes this lap, will be moving towards the top end of the charts. No, he won't. He's decided to have had enough coming into the pits. But the 8 Bentley, don't forget, this is one fighting for the championship in the overall cup and in the endurance cup. It's the leader, but the Bentley boys standing around at the back of the garage.
Now there is the car. Finally, we have found come up with an image of the car that is currently quickest overall, still by that 0.8 of a second. And whether they're going to continue, well, this lap isn't indicating a personal best or a purple for overall best in any of the sectors. Maybe they're going to make a visit into the pits. So they're taking that wider line up in turn 9, not on the racing line. Car looks really stable, and the exit of 9 over the curb, not getting that very sudden snap oversteer. Up to 2nd place, Benoit Trullier in the number 2 Audi.
So the Audi's out of the picture this morning. It was all about Mercedes, and it's all changed around. Clearly, right now, you've got to be bold, but don't want to take any particular risks. But the track conditions are improving.
Yes, I imagine, amongst a little bit of traffic, a bit clumsy through the chicane, turns 14 and 15. I assume that, as we saw in the Bentley garage, they're just sitting there waiting to see what the track conditions are going to do.
Yeah, which way is it going to move? Well, I'll tell you one person who's on the move, Dries van Thor. 3rd fastest at the moment to the number 5 Audi. Looks so this lap could put him top, and quickest. So it does. He's only quickest by under a 1/10 of a second, but he's definitely going the right way. So it's Audi top from the 911 Porsche, the 2nd of the Audis, number 2 in at 3rd place, and Daniel Perfetti, so still going well in the world of Mercedes. HTP Motorsport, they've got 3 cars here. That's the one he's sharing with, sorry, it's Franck Pereira, not Perfetti. What am I talking about? It's Franck Pereira shared with Maxi Bouk and Jimmy Eriksson. But the number 5 Audi is the car on the move, but as you can see, in the thick of the traffic.
Yes, and Dries van Thor, the Audi number 5, with the red flash over the bonnet and the roof of the car. Again, illustrating just what talent he has got, and that all really started, that really came to the fore, I think, in Budapest and carried through in Nürburgring. And again here, these are difficult conditions. A young driver still in the process of learning his craft, but showing great ability in difficult conditions. Why the Audi is performing as it's doing now, whereas in dry conditions this morning, they really were struggling. It was the 75 Audi, in fact, Philippe Salaquadra, who was principally, I think, the quickest of the Audis in the end, and that was down in 9th place. That was the first Audi, 9th place this morning.
Yeah, it really was. Mercedes under control. But now what we're seeing is the next 2 laps are not going to be quick for Dries van Tor, because he's got that thing when you have 50 cars trying to go out on this circuit, 4.6 kilometres, and he's got stuck in traffic going around the number 24 Lamborghini.
Dries.
Oh, a bit wider. And of course, a bit greasier on the outside.
I just wonder, because these cars do have traction control, they can dial it in, but traction control has its place and its purpose, but I think most drivers prefer the feel of controlling the car on the throttle pedal and might tend to take the traction control out. And these conditions are more slick than wet, but they're challenging for everybody on track. Dries van Tor comes across the line to complete his 4th lap on this run.
Yeah, 4 seconds and more down his best. The 97 Aston Martin, it's the only Aston Martin. Johnny Adam at the wheel, down in 16th place at the moment, 2 and a bit seconds down on the Ultimate. Looking for other changes, they are coming. We've just had Felix Sarraez in the 88 Mercedes go up to 4th place overall. Top second covers, we'll squeeze the car in 6th place in there as well. Very, very tight in there, but really it's Dries van Tor. Can he get clear? Looking at Johnny Adam, can he find a good opening part to the lap? No, he can't as yet, but now he's got clear traffic.
The thing with the Aston Martin, it always looks an easy car. It may not be, but it always looks, particularly when you see Johnny Adam pushing the car as he does, it always looks a car that gives the driver that confidence, be it wet. These conditions are not what I would call anywhere near full wet, but they're certainly slippery, and it's changing again by the lap. 88 up to 3rd place. So.
Yeah, so 2 good laps in a row for Felix Sarraez, one of the 4 cars from ASP. That car was 3rd fastest this morning, so a good run, but murky conditions here. We've had this flurry of light rain, but it's now 20 past 5 in the afternoon, 25 past 5 yesterday. It was beautiful sunshine, so very, very different conditions.
Can Johnny Adam improve? No, he's going into the pits. So he was down, just relegated down to 20th place. I thought maybe he might have stayed out.
Now, the best of the Lamborghinis this morning was the one challenging for the championships. 5th fastest this morning, 6th fastest this afternoon in the hands of Mirko Bortolotti. Under a second away from that ultimate pace, still set by the number 5 Audi. But as you can see, great gaggles of car anywhere you look around the circuit. But one car we've got to look for is that 84 Mercedes at the front end. Always such a strong feature. And the yellow-nosed Audi, of course, don't forget that won the Sprint Championship last time out at the Nürburgring. Stuart Leonard and Robin Freins, a super fraught race from start to finish. Almost didn't know where to look. There was so much happening, and they didn't really think they were in with a championship shout. But let's look at Robin Freins. It's trying to work his way through traffic, John.
Yes, successfully gets ahead of the Lamborghini, now on to the tail of the 84 Mercedes-Benz. So let's see what Robin Freins can do compared to the Mercedes. The Mercedes as a brand just dominated this morning. So whether there's just something about the circuit and the Mercedes that works, or whether there's maybe just a circumstantial, we don't know. Straight line speed differential between the Audi, Mercedes. Well, the Audi's getting the benefit of a very slight toe, but not sufficient to get down the inside. But he does. He makes a late break, a good pass by Robin Freins. Has he overrun? No, he managed to get the nose in, but he's had to be tippy too because he was on the edge. But that was a courageous, well-judged move from Robin Freins to get ahead of the 84 Mercedes. Frank Pereira behind the wheel, and you wouldn't have expected Frank Pereira to give him any slack.
So, if you're wondering, we're debating what's the little thing. Looks like a taxi meter in the middle there. He owes 455 euros, 456 going up. We'll get back to everyone. We've worked out what that is in the middle cockpit. Your guess, John? So, anyhow, plenty for the driver to concentrate on. But as you can see, the windscreen, there is still very light rain falling, enough for the windscreen wipers. No spray on the screen. That is simply because he's not close enough to another car. But Robin Freins, at the moment, outside. He's down 28th fastest in the number 17 Audi, but he has got clear track for the first time in a while. But his first sector a bit down on his best, but he should gain a few places.
Nice to have clear track at this point of the circuit. Straightens the car up as much as he can before he ran the curb. Smart thing to do. You don't want to be going across the curb with a car in a yaw condition. So he got it straightened up, then down the hill. Judicious use of the brakes. You're braking downhill. We did see this morning 2 of the Audis having massive lockups. Now, WRT said, no, we don't have any brake problems, but 2 cars, big lockups, both major flat spots. So the 17 Audi Robin Freens comes around to this rather slow. It doesn't have a flow. That's the problem. Particularly here, 14, bang over the curb. 15, bang over the curb. Nothing pretty about it. Then you get the car positioned to go into turn 16, which is a good corner. Again, just watching the curb on the outside. You don't get trapped and get sucked into the gravel. So it comes across the line.
No, a second and a bit down on his best lap. Yeah, still way down the order. You wanted to say unsatisfactory there, didn't you, when you were describing that final sweep at the end of the lap? But you held it in. But it does, the flow that used to be there long ago has long since departed. Right, the 63 Lamborghini, that was up to 5th at one place, 6th at one point. It's now down to 7th in the garage.
So they were on wet weather tyres.
I think all of them, apart from Jules Gounon, who seemed to be entertaining us so royally. But the 87 Mercedes is down, it's been in the pits, it's down in 33rd position. But that was the one that won the prize for spectacle. In this, the second and final hour and a half of free practice. We go into qualifying tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Don't know what the weather's going to bring, but Watty, we've heard it could well be rain. We
believe, and I think the pit lane in general believes from the general forecasts that have been made available, that certainly the qualifying starting at 9 o'clock, most likely to be greeted by a wet track, which only adds even further to the drama of this final event of the year, a 3-hour event, which is again first time I believe the final event, final round of the combined championships as well as the Enduro Championship are being held. So the 53 Ferrari, turn 5, just a minor harmless spin, but
Louis Michiel, so you can see the wave flags before the corner, everyone else
slightly
pussyfooting down the hill towards it.
Compromised, and
now would he be able to get those rear wheels out?
He's beached the trouble. I think he's just waiting. Right. He's got it going yet.
Okay.
It just had to be clear that no traffic was coming, and that's always that part of the track. If you drop into the gravel, then the middle of the car, the bottom of the car can get beached. So he makes his way up around into turn 7, 8, and then up the hill into turn 9.
Now it's a new race delivery for that.
That's discs going on to the Lamborghini.
Yeah, that Michel Bronicheski Giacomo Puccini number 11 Ferrari used to be red and white, but it appears to be black this afternoon, unless it's just so gloomy that I cannot tell. A lot of the top runners, about 40% of the field in the pits at the moment, trying to work out which way to jump. The track is still wet, but it's a light rain that's been falling, but it has been falling for about half an hour.
Well, there's no spray that we can see coming off any of the cars being used. So Bortolotti out and directly back in.
I actually sense the track is a bit wetter now than it was, because no lap times are notably quick. We've got no improvements from anybody in the top 40 of the 50 runners for the last lap or so, and anybody who'd improved before then was someone down at the tail end of the field. So I sense it is that little bit wetter and a bit more spray now starting to come off the back of the cars, John.
Yes, it is, and that's coming through turn 3. So we are beginning to see the diffusers do their job, and that's the spray. There's the, well, they're just checking tire pressures front and rear. So clearly tires sitting in the garage will lose pressure, consequently, or temperature then pressure. So just a quick check by the Grasser. Remember, they did a blinding pit stop in the sprint race.
It was about 5 seconds quicker than we expected it to be. It was remarkable.
Unbelievable.
The Nürburgring, yes.
So again, they've got the garage at the very end of the pit lane, which in theory shouldn't make any difference, but I think there's always the view that if you are at that end garage, when you get off the jacks and rolling, you just don't have to lift, because you'll be through the line that demarcates the end of the speed limit pit lane, 50 kilometers per hour.
Now, always useful to have that long shot from turn 10 back up that infield straight. Still the windscreen wipers going. A bit more spray now coming off the back of the cars. The lights are becoming a bit spangled when you see them from head on. There's the 66 Attempto Racing Lamborghini. That's being shared this weekend by Manuel Cerqueda Diaz, another Spanish driver on home ground. Isaac Tumluk, who's also Spanish, and they're sharing that with the regular racer Max van Splunteren, who briefly in the morning session went up as high as second place, but then tumbled down the order.
Look at these two tripping over each other. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Ferrari would be the quicker of the two cars because it's caught up to this group of cars. But all of a sudden, Lamborghini not prepared to concede.
Well, let's find out about the conditions. Let's go down and here in the world of Bentley, the number 8 car, challenging for the championship. And Dakota has caught up with Maxime Soule.
Maxime, now we can see the car being worked on behind me. Do you know actually what they're doing?
No, we only thought it was going to be a small shower, and apparently it's more than a small shower. So we're going to go out. We're just putting a rain setup on and see what we can do with that.
When are you going out?
Andy's going to go out in like 5 minutes.
Now, are you going to be able to hold on to this championship lead right now in the Endurance Series?
Yeah, we for that. So we're going to try to do it. Obviously, if the weather stays like this, it's going to be very hard, but we'll see. Tomorrow is another day.
Let's see how it goes. Thank you.
Well, just looking at Maxime's hobby, seafood, that seems about right for wet weather, and on the ocean as his pastime. So
yeah, pretty good. I mean, that could be sailing, fishing, kayaking, whatever. Cycling and running as a sport. So,
but with such a competitive man, it's winning that really, really goes to Maxime, and they win well, don't they?
Oh yeah.
I mean, Andy Soucek, along with Vincent Abril, of course, as well.
A very strong driver lineup in the number 8 car. There we have a look at it. It'll look a little bit different next year because the latest version of the Continental GT3 has come out, and it is quite a different shape at the front and slightly more radical at the rear, much more, I would say, it's more contemporary, possibly is the word I would use. It'll be interesting to see how that has a bearing on the car's performance. It's not going to hurt it, I can guarantee you that.
No, absolutely so. And it's great to have Bentley re-establishing a sporting reputation to go with, obviously, an illustrious past. So, almost all the front runners in the pits. That number 8 Bentley, just heard from Maxime Soule. We thought it was a shower, but it's rather more than that. And you can see much more spray coming off the back of the cars. But it's not wet.
No,
it's damp
but
wet.
It's getting now. It is the track. The last lap for the Lamborghini, 2:05.8.
Yeah, 6 seconds off the best pace, really. 6-7 seconds.
Bortolotti in a relatively clear bit of track with a 85 Mercedes behind him. He's back in the pits again. So working place under a palm tree. House music. I didn't do a bit of investigation into house music. He was right. It's not my style. Sport, ice drifting, and food, understandably Italian. Well, I would not disagree with that.
Mama's cooking, but Bortolotti, a lot to play for here this weekend at Barcelona. And I believe that's Christian Engelhardt going out into the pit lane, so he's coming in for, yes it is, and to take over, so they all want to experience the conditions as they are at the moment. Music, everything. He's like you, John.
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't do 70s, well, he might do 70s.
He might.
But music, skiing as a sport, place, the racetrack, again, Italian food. I absolutely concur with that.
Well, you can't race for Lamborghini and not enjoy the Italian food, can you?
Well,
or can you?
He is German. I mean,
yeah, I know, but he's racing for an Italian team.
Leberkanoodle soup and all those wonderful dumplings and wonderful. I mean, for example, in the Stuttgart area where Porsche and Mercedes, that's Schwabia, and Schwabian food, Spätzle.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful food.
Push it around in the pan. Good stuff. So look at the spray coming off the side of through the vents behind the front wheels. It has become appreciably
Suddenly
wetter.
It has got a wet racetrack.
This is
wet
proper
now. Yeah.
We started with the words on the screen, wet track conditions. We couldn't see it from our commentary position. Then you notice cars in the pit lane that have been parked for a while, little dry area under their noses, but the sheer amount of spray coming off the track. Quickest guys on the circuit at the moment, they're lapping in about 2:05, 2:06. But
actually, as the track really does begin to get wet, that's when the wet weather tyre really does the job it's designed to do. When the session started, as we sit on board with Frank Pereira coming out of turn 9, if you've got that scummy, slicky kind of surface that we had in the beginning, the tyre's not designed for that. It's designed to clear water. It's designed to bite into the water. The tread block is designed to clear that water away. And we're getting nearer to that kind of condition. It's still through turns 9 and 10, 11, 12, this far end into sector 3 of the circuit. Still pretty slippery on the surface, and Frank Pereira backs out of it. That's one of the other Mercedes go through, one of the Black Falcon cars go through, looking for track position. Now we saw on the Audi a readout. Mercedes have got that readout as well as 4:27, 4:28.
Yeah, well, it could well be time in the cockpit. We'll keep an eye out for that. But one thing I'm keeping an eye out is the weather is changing. The mountains we can see in the distance, we now see with blue sky above them. We're still under the edge, hopefully, of a grey cloud, and that will go away. But riding, looking through the windscreen with Franck Pereira, you can see at various points, certain points the circuit rather wetter. The start-finish straight is not the wettest point on the course. No, it's not. And, I mean, when you're on these wet weather tyres, ideally you want to keep them cool. You don't want to be running down what is a dry main straight. You know, the weight of the car plus the aero effect is not what you want to do. You don't want to get the tyre overheated, and you can see it is still very tricky coming out of turn 2. Runs very wide, and the entry into turn 3, fighting to keep the car, actually makes an unusual apex, which is not normal in dry conditions for turn 3. Then straightens up, gets on the brakes, and feels the car. Loads of front end understeer. Still balancing the car, steering and throttle. Third gear, so he pulled fourth, no, he stays in third into turn 5 again. Takes the long way around, makes a very late cut to straighten the exit to try and get the maximum traction possible. Well, just still third gear, well, yeah. Finally he's found fourth. There are 6 of them in the box, you know. Yeah, well, you can try all of them in turn. But just to prove how the conditions are worse, that first sector of the lap was 3 seconds down on the ultimate first sector time set earlier in the session. Right at the outset, we had Jules Gounon, who'd been second fastest this morning, going so sideways, massive tank slapper. Third gear's getting a right hammering here today because he's only used third and fourth so far on this lap, down to second gear. First gear, I'm surprised. In these conditions, I would use second gear and let the torque of the engine pull the car out, not use first gear where you might, you know, create a little bit of wheel spin, but you know, what do I know, for goodness sake. Yeah, I mean, things move on, John. Done all that stuff. But the point I was about to make was that right at the outset, with Gounon being incredibly sideways and spectacular, I expect we would have a lot of cars going around. Once it started getting wetter, they still resisted spinning. Only the 53 Ferrari so far within our sight, within anybody's sight, has had a little spin. That was recovered. Louis Michiel's got it out of the gravel at turn 5. And continued on his way. Everyone else stays on the black stuff. Well, I mean, over the 2 pages which cover the top 40, only one driver, Frankie Stippler, is up into 40th place. So clearly track conditions, as we look down into turn 10, and is, well, they all get through. I love that colour scheme. That white good, isn't it? Blue is such a good-looking car. That's the Jelmer Berman, Adam Christodoulou, Lucas Stoltz car. Jelmer, Dutch racer. Another person who likes being on the water skiing. Yes, but he likes dance music. Is he up for Strictly, would you think? Well, I don't know. I think you could ask him. Dutchman, do they? Oh, I bet they do. Bet they do if they want. But yeah, look, fantastic livery. So Black Falcon, very high levels of presentation. They've got the yellow and black car. That's number 15. The blue, red and white car. But the pick of the pack is this one, and certainly in the hands of Adam Christodoulou, it looked very handy early on. Again, back at Spa, that was a car that was a potential winner pretty much all the way through until the closing hours of the 24 hours. Jelmer Berman, and there's almost, you can see the spray just hanging in the air as this gaggle of cars led by Matt Simmons in number 22 Nissan. But what's great there, looking up the start-finish straight, we know it dips down to the first corner, but it actually comes to the highest point pretty much opposite us by the control tower. So you see the spray of the cars coming out of the final corner in the background, then they come, you know what? Like an army. We're going to have a rainbow over the main straight, I reckon. Do you reckon? Well, he could, because the blue sky is coming our way, John, but we have just under an hour for it to reach here and do its stuff. Is that 88 car. Well, at the wheel is Daniel Juncadella, Spanish racer, just pushing a little hard on home ground and putting gravel on the circuit. I didn't see which of the Lamborghinis it was. It would have had less traction than planned. Out of turn 5, just maybe trying to take the long, good old Imperial terms about 30 miles away, and we can now see them, which we were able to do half an hour ago. No, in fact, there's enough light. I was worried that we passed a snatch vehicle. So car 82 spun into the gravel bed at turn 4. Really? So I've got a yellow flag in sector 2. Is that the beginning of sector 2 or the end of sector 1? I think a sector 1 time is a good time is 32 seconds. Does that get you as far as sector 2 begins on the entry just before turn 4? There we are. Well spotted, John. So, but it's interesting. Both the co-drivers were ready to go out in that car, both with helmets on. So, kite surfing. Another person who likes the water, likes to do it at Tarifa. That makes sense for a Spaniard, right down on the Atlantic there. Mediterranean food, house pop. I don't know, John. House pop. He's hedging his bets. I think I need more definition of house pop. So
veering into this sort of Mirko Bortolotti range. He looks a bit more, I would say, classical.
Classical has popped. Now you can see the water moving across the screen of the Bentley there. We've ridden on board the 63 Lamborghini, and it's the 8 Bentley that is challenging it for the Endurance Cup honours and also for outright honours overall, or certainly in the case of Vincent Abril. But the amount of spray being put up by the Writer Youngstars Lamborghini Gallardo, will Andy tuck up the inside? I'm sure he will. As he goes out of turn 3, coming up towards the end of the first sector, we will see that pretty much just under the gantry marks that point before you hit the brakes and go down into turn 4. Well, is the Lamborghini bothering to brake, or was that Andy backing off? Oh, starting to squeak to the edge of the
flag, so they had to back out of it.
Okay, so basically Andy probably would have seen that rather ahead of the 24 car. Less experienced drivers than that. Caitlin Wood, Marco Hedis to Cangas. Just waiting for the period to be over.
Still in the yellow zone, so he's overtaken under the yellow zone. Now we're green, so it's a mute point whether that'll be picked up by the race director. And,
well, luckily he wasn't carrying an onboard camera, apart from the one he's got on board.
Well, he's got us telling the whole world about it, so, you know.
Now, just at that point, we're rising to the top of the circuit, the highest point at turn 10. In the background, the sky is definitely lighter, but now as he swings round, heading a bit more northeast, it's not so light. That's the area behind us.
Well, from where we're sitting, we can see that in the distance. But I think where Andy Suchek is sitting, it's still looking, 50 shades of grey. Yeah.
Well, it's an improvement. There was only one shade of grey earlier, but as he rises out of turn 10, up the slope, the windscreen wiper having to work pretty hard, not doing clearing everything, but it's the position of the camera just beyond the sweep of the blade. But the fastest time, 1 minute 58.3, I think that's in everybody's dreams at the moment. We've got 50-odd minutes remaining in the session, but it's getting wetter and wetter.
Again, the rain's... in the far distance, it's look like it's clearing up, but just directly overhead. So literally, you've got grey track, grey sky. You got
and what's worth pointing out, John, of course, we don't even have this number 8 Bentley. It spent so long in the garage before coming out. In the top 40 runners, so those who went out earlier,
session,
they would be stuffed.
Would be absolutely. Vincent Abril sits pensively. Maxime Soulet looks slightly more chilled. I don't know whether he's listening to the radio traffic or he's dialed into Radio 4 Extra, listening to one of those wonderful old plays that used to be broadcast.
No, shipping forecast. He likes to be on the ocean. 26.
Look at this congestion.
How many cars would you like on the same piece of tarmac?
Congestion, confusion. Chaos.
Well, unfortunately, the Team HB Racing Lamborghini, one that stopped in the first session rather in the way. That's down towards the bottom end of the top 30, the 26. Simon Gachet, busy driver at the end of the season, coming on with Santalot Racing, and he quite impressed us at the Nürburgring. And just again trying to find a bit of
Christopher Hasser. As the pro in that particular car, Christopher Hasser.
Romain Monti, who's been on board from the start of the season, but the lights, they do need the lights on these cars as they sweep around the circuit. One of the 2 Rinaldi cars in front of him, Pierre Aire's car, shared with Rino Mastronardi. But it's about ploughing your furrow, bursting away through the spray. But track conditions changing all the while, just as we thought it was starting to dry out a little bit.
Visibility beginning to diminish.
Exactly so.
Coming down in the grey. Image at home is saying, good.
Got away with the spin, put a bit of on the track, but then skittering around.
Is so.
Doesn't look quite. Kane, should we go for that?
No, I believe
in the 488 Ferrari 488 entered by Rinaldi Racing. Rino Mastronardi and no one else have a bit more driving than their
Rino Marcello. The actor.
No. Oh, I see.
La Dolce Vita, Trevi Fountain, Rain,
Keep talking. I'm just going to look
where he was born.
No, I'm sure it isn't.
But it's a nice thought.
He's actually very good. Very nice. Yes, I remember going there long ago. BMW M3 actually. Then we went and drove at Mugello, so it wasn't a bad weekend long ago. But right now, we certainly didn't have weather like they're having at the moment. Windscreen hard at the start of the session. It wasn't entirely clear that they needed them.
I remember one broadcaster saying that the windscreen wipers were wiping beautifully. I thought it was a very interesting observation.
Oh, I mean, getting the car 488 for grey and yellow.
5, 6, and if you add their names together,
It's just touch crew. All in the top 8. Their best 3 cars with the top 3.
there's an indication just how much water has fallen. The pit lane is now puddling. No puddles on track, and certainly we're not seeing any water flowing diagonally to cause the dreaded aquaplaning. But it is now a wet track. You can see the volume of water that's being displaced by the Pirelli wet weather tyre. And it's a load of water.
Right, the McLaren's trying to put down their marker. We saw some good skating. He's had quite an up and down season. Very promising young driver, but as you can see, their times come quite late in the session. In fact, lapping the 2-minute 5s, that's as quick as anybody else out there.
Frankie Stippler's done it again.
2 laps in a row.
Yes, up to 37th.
Oh, he might as well retire now.
2:05.36. Clearly, right now, the quickest driver in these conditions on the racetrack.
Yeah, and Ben Barnicoat also lapping in the 2-minute 5s. I don't know if this lap will be the same, but the only one of the top drivers who was lapping fast recently was Daniel Juncadella, but he's just done a 2-minute 9, so another 2-minute 5, 2-minute 6. So Ben Barnicoat at this point in the session going as well as anybody can out on the circuit. But Frankie Stippler marginally faster. As a consequence, he moves ahead of Barnicoat in the overall order.
So there is that Frank Stippler. I don't know if it's Frank Stippler's helmet, but certainly it's indicating it's him behind the wheel in the 75 Audi, the car that currently quickest overall. Well, Frank is the consummate, endurance GT3 whatever driver. So much experience, so many years behind the wheel of Audis, and of course races everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Historic to hysterical to GT3.
Yeah, a major star in historic racing. Doesn't seem to matter what car gets thrown in front of him.
Even a Jag 3.4 litre Mark II.
It was good having you down at the revival this year at Goodwood.
I watched the streaming; it was more entertaining. Talking about streaming, it is streaming on the circuit as well.
I like what you did there. So Frank Stippler got clear of the traffic and slightly compromised by traffic on this lap. So the ISR Audi is not going too wide on the curbs. They're showing that experience. A couple of cars behind starting to take to the area beyond the track where it's even more slippery. But Frank now starting to wind it up all over again.
Yes, and you can see that he seemingly has found the circuit, the part of the circuit where he can get grip and therefore he can push that little bit harder. The car looks stable. You're not seeing that very erratic movement that some of the other cars that we've seen earlier in the session, but back into the pit lane, so he'll be happy with that run, because if we do have wet conditions on Sunday morning, he'll be thinking, well, maybe we're in with a shot for a strong grid position.
I was going to say he was the fastest guy out there. His last lap just been improved upon by Daniel Juncadella because he'd had a good lap, a poor lap, another good lap. So the 88 Mercedes going very well. Now, I haven't seen this one for a while, the 333 Ferrari, and that is 23rd fastest. Alexander Matschel had such a good run in the Pro-Am series in recent years, and that's lapping 2-minute 9, so it just goes to show the really quick guys are quite some way. These are tricky conditions, and therefore the gaps between a lot of the cars do get strung out. Also going well, the number 2 Audi at the moment, and that's 5th fastest overall, but lapping at good pace in the hands of
just remember, Alexander Matschel is a bronze driver, and these are testing conditions. The grading of the different levels of license. Bronze is the entry level, you might say. So in the circumstance, going into the pit lane, no,
he's not going on round. But he said, when spoken to earlier, he said he actually enjoys racing in the rain, and certainly if you've done a number of laps here and you're starting to be confident where the grip comes, he certainly looks perfectly confident in the car. And a 2-minute 8, so he's 1 and a bit seconds quicker than his previous lap.
Look at the Audi closing us, the former Ferrari further down the track. But in the case of these conditions, it's always about more haste, less speed. So Matschel gets the car into turn 1, then the transition to turn 2. You need to keep the car off the curb and the exit, then you've got this entry into the long, and the line in these conditions is variable between virtually every driver-car combination. in the dry, you let the car run out much earlier in the middle of the corner and just hang on until you reach the exit, down into turn 4, taking the long way round. He probably feels that that's where I can get more grip from the Ferrari. Remember, twin turbo V8 in the 488, not the lovely sonorous 458. Again, gets the nose pretty well in. It's interesting, he's got a rearward TV camera rather than depending on mirrors, so he's got a pretty clear picture of anybody closing up behind him. Wow. I suspect there are still wing mirrors on the Ferrari to give him the blind spots that the TV camera might not do.
Yeah, well, the 458 before it was famous for having blind spots, and it's a one-way round it. But 333 continues on its way, lapping just outside the top 20. But one of the quicker cars, but the quickest drivers are lapping the 2 minutes 5s, 2 minutes 6. And Marcel Fessler, the number 5 Audi, is fastest of all. He is right on the current pace, and that's all you can be. But it is getting brighter. The cloud is moving over the top of the main grandstand here. We have nearly 40 minutes remaining in this 90-minute session. The conditions were damp at the start, became almost properly wet, but you get the feeling, John, they're starting to change. Mountains to our left now starting to become a little or the hills rather than the mountains. A little easier to pick it out. So things are improving. We could have a sunny evening here on the Saturday just north of Barcelona, but right now, as far as the drivers are concerned, it's slippery.
Yeah, and it's a kind of frustration because it's not, but still, there's a fair amount of water on the track. But normally, in here down the straight, you can see a drying line now. So it's that combination of not quite fully wet, but not dry enough to feel that you can lean on the car with conviction.
I was saying that a 2 minute 5 flat was very good from Daniel Juncadella a few laps ago. 2 minutes 4.8 by Marcel Fessler. There's Alexander Matchell. He likes motorsports, don't we all? But Africa, I'll go with him on that one.
Depeche Mode, get out of it. Never, not in a Now for me, that while the conditions are still tricky, they are in certain parts obviously better than they are where we're watching here through turns 6 and 7. So maybe down into turn 1 and maybe towards the end of the lap they're able to get on the throttle a little bit more confidently than they could have done 10 minutes ago. That
lap of 2 minutes 4 seconds is nearly 6 seconds off the drive time. I think the only improvements we're going to see in terms of position will be down those who didn't get a lap in early when it was still wet. Be people down like that number 59 McLaren, 45th fastest of the 50 runners, but maybe because they didn't do a good time early on, they can improve because their mark was low. But for people like Marcel Fessler, the number 5 Audi, top of the charts, and the 911 Porsche, shared by Robert and Alfred Renauer and Jürgen Hering, they will most likely stay at the top end of the charts. Drivers again going right out towards the edge of the circuit at turn 13, then down the hill to the chicane. The wise ones staying off the curbs. Andrew Watson stayed off the first, but we've seen this quite a lot. They get past the first and they just keep drifting too wide and hit the second.
It's a transition right to left to right, and you don't really want to attack a curb in these conditions. 206.3, so that's 42. Where's that brought that?
It hasn't brought
it into the top 40 at the minute.
But what it has done is just consolidated. That's one of the quicker cars on the track at the moment. In the top 10 fastest cars of the time.
Currently,
as the track conditions change. The BMWs also haven't shown their hand in great form. Also, like the McLaren, some of the McLarens down in the outside the top 40. 46th fastest for the Rover Racing crew, the 98 crew, Marcus Paltler, Bruno Spengler and Tom Blomqvist, as they keep shuffling their groupings, and the British Swede, if you like, Tom Blomqvist at the wheel at the moment, getting his experience. Son of Stig.
From Örebro in Sweden. And I tell you what, Stig Blomqvist, certainly not in the first flush of youth, but sort of in a similar time span to me, is absolutely as quick as he ever was, particularly on ice, snow, low grip surfaces.
The 16 Mercedes, you saw it in the pit garage not so long ago, just it was 41st fastest, and it won't be improving like that. It looks like it's gone around, but without hitting anything at the back. Can't quite see.
Ollie Morley, Miguel Torgel, and
Ollie Morley
Kirchhofer.
Morley at the moment. I said the quick gun in that car was Marvin Kirchhofer. Showed well in the dry this morning, but unfortunately looks like no damage done, but facing the wrong way. That's got it wrong out of turn 7. It goes to 8.
Difficult place to get back onto the track because you're blinded by the barriers. on the inside, and unless you've got somebody on the opposite side of the track can give you a wave through, it's not a nice situation to face, especially if you're coming off what is gravel onto a wet track. Well, it's grass onto a wet track.
Yeah.
You're trying to, and of course you're sitting on the left-hand side, not on the right-hand side, so you're having to look through the window on the what would be the passenger seat side.
And with so many other cars out on the track, will there ever be a gap for him to aim into? But he's going to go across the circuit onto the grass on the other side. Won't have the lot. Oh, now running off the circuit at turn 3. Rover Racing BMW.
Well, also it's on a slope, so can he get any traction to push get the drive up onto the racetrack? And that in itself might be a part of the difficulty that Ollie Morley, it is Oliver in the car.
Yeah, Oliver Morley at the wheel at the moment. They were 18th fastest this morning when the Mercedes were the cars to have. Now he's got going.
Now he's got it. Well, good job. Well done.
Did very well.
Yeah, absolutely. He waited, but got everything locked up.
So let's go down because Johnny Kane down in the McLaren end of the pit lane is going to be telling us what's happening, and can McLaren make a move forward?
Johnny, now you're doing quite well so far. You're on the pace. How are you feeling?
Yeah, pretty good. In this session, we didn't go out at the very start, and it's actually rained more since the start. So the times look pretty competitive with everybody that's going out there at the minute.
With these good times, I guess you're hoping it's going to rain tomorrow as well.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we went okay this morning. So we'll see. I mean, Barcelona's a great track. It'd be nice to be a little bit quicker in a straight line, but the car's handling pretty well. And we haven't really shown our hand so far, so fingers crossed, looking forward to the race tomorrow.
So what more is there to come?
Pardon?
What more is there to come?
Well, I mean, everybody's probably in the same boat, you know, run less fuel and better tyres and see where you end up. But the car feels pretty good and seems pretty happy at the moment.
Results so far, thanks.
Thank you.
So Sam Tordoff in the 43 Stracker Racing McLaren at the moment. The 59 sister car, if you will, kicking up the spray, but they're just, well, 43 is in 38th position, 59 still outside the top 40, 42nd at the moment, but it's getting brighter by the moment. The track should be drying by the moment. In fact, a dry line appearing at various points on the circuit where there isn't gradient.
What you need now is the ambient to rise, which is probably not going to do a great deal, but if you get a rise in ambient, you get a number of cars on track, it then does appear very quickly that dry line will be there, but it's certain parts of the racetrack clearly are wetter, including the pit lane, than other parts, so everybody still having to be tippy-toe until they feel the confidence to be able to use the throttle. And watch 17 coming around the outside, and that's the 75 I think just ahead of it, so that's going to be an interesting dive down the inside. Robin Friens thinks about it. But
Jake Dennis on board at the moment, just taking it over. But yeah, looking very feisty indeed. But I was just going to say it's a strange practice session because
he's backed out of it altogether. Now he's just going to let traffic
let everyone through by looks things. But
what's he done there?
Well, he's really hung back. And the Mercedes behind, the Black Falcon Mercedes, with the American trio, one of whom on board at the moment. He's rather compromised their swing through the final corner, but certainly for Jake Dennis, 28th fastest. I reckon we might see a really good flurry of laps towards the end. He's been very impressive through this season, Jake Dennis, really come across some single-seaters with great aplomb. And
again, moving over to the right to try and actually keep the tyre cooler with the right-hand side of the main straight not being used, so there's still some water there. Now it stays wide all the way around the entry, and the circumference of the corner builds speed. It's got grip, the balance looks pretty good. Just has to be careful, those painted white and red curbings. Then watch to see again the long route around into and out of the exit of turn 4. So a lot of confidence. He's a confident young man. I mean, dressed as he was dressed last night with his cap back to front, he had to be. But anyway, that was what you get with the youth of today. So down through turn 6, then on the brakes, and just feed it in gently, get the car straight, then try and straight line across the curb to get the best traction, the best drive up the hill into turn 9.
Yeah, just looking to see what a good lap time is at the moment. 2:05 is still a good lap time. Quite a few people in the 2:06s now. Last time around was 2:08, but he was compromised.
Yeah, no,
he's slowly compromised himself.
Probably going to catch up to the group of cars that are directly ahead of him. He needs to try and clear them if possible.
Yeah, well, the Jaguar was travelling very slowly,
he's
so get on the inside of that.
The Jaguar. So that didn't really have any bearing. The car further ahead was the Audi that he ran up, very close to just coming to this part of the racetrack 1 lap ago. So on this occasion, there's not an issue for Jake Dennis in the 17 Audi. So 2:08 was his previous lap. This ought to be quicker.
Yeah, but he hasn't improved in any of the...
But he was in the pit lane.
Coming in the pits. Okay, well, if we want an Audi improvement, let's look to the 75 car. Philip Salicada looks like he's going to improve. Needs to. He's down in 30-70 state. He does improve. That's the first proper lap time improvement we've had for about 20 minutes. But the track is absolutely, to the eye, improving. Vincent Vos looking on. So much to consider down in the Belgian Audi Club Team WRT garage. Now, looking at the 911. Still second fastest. Now at the wheel is Jürgen Hering. We've had the identical twins, Alfred and Robert Renauer. Robert set the time very early on to go second on the charts, but Jürgen, we're being told today he makes all his money from... there we were, wasn't him? I was going to say it's a Tempter racing, is it? Making it from cleaning cars. They go up and down.
Yes.
These cars will all be a little grubby up and down the pit lane. Jürgen has raced for a Tempter in the past. I think that was my little link there.
Your link to that?
Yeah, we'll go there. I didn't realise how I got there.
Well, there we see the Bentley coming down the straight. Is that 7? I can't... Look at the lights. It's number 7, indeed it is. So it's coming down to complete a lap. Who's behind the wheel? Can't be on timing and scoring in the minute, so we can't identify which driver. We only go down to the top 40, not the top 51.
But how often does this happen? When a car's had a problem on the circuit, we had the 53 Ferrari coming back from its spin, and the driver was done for pit lane speeding. We saw the 16 Mercedes off the circuit with Oliver Morley. He's come back and he's been warned for the same thing.
Exactly. Well, as you say, how often does it happen? And it's frequently. So the Bentley coming out of turn 4, just getting the power on, the whole car sliding around. Looks great, whether it's effective or efficient in terms of lap speed, hard to tell. So out of turn 5, full throttle. You don't need to make an apex in turn 6. You're really more about position now for your braking and then entry into 7. Then straight line it as early as possible up through 8. And will the number 7 make an apex? No, it doesn't make an apex. It's still too slippery up there to think that the apex is the quicker way around turn 9.
Yes, it seems wrong when you look at it from the back as the car goes up there, but if that's where it's slippery, you'll suddenly find yourself straight across the line. You will get a hold on the outside line. And now down to turn 10, a very cautious line being taken in there, because still they can tell far better than we can where the wettest points are on the circuit, but that's at a low point, so it could well be. But even in the dry conditions, John, we saw people locking up, most notably the Audis, down into turn 10.
Haven't seen that this afternoon in wet conditions, so I still maintain that there was something that they were maybe be doing, because you don't get 2 cars, you might have 1 but not 2 in an identical part of the racetrack with an identical kind of situation.
Yeah, not drivers of the calibre of the 2 involved who went straight on with the Audis down at turn 10. So the times will be improving, but when Oliver Jarvis and Stephen Kane,
Guy Smith in that car.
Well, we worked out it was one of the shorter ones because wasn't Bugs Bunny on the right. Well, both those are very entertaining individuals, Stephen Kane and Ollie Jarvis. Dead serious in the car, but out of it they have a good time. Great to see. So the 63 Lamborghini, 7th fastest, Caldarelli at the wheel at the moment. We saw the 82 sister car off in the gravel, and 63 car in the reckoning for the overall GT Series honours, but also in the reckoning second in the rankings for the Endurance Cup, so lot to play for.
Last lap this car was a 2.5, 2.5.5, so is there a bit of performance in the 63 Lamborghini in these conditions? Certainly loads of confidence as it comes out of turn 16. And 2.4.1.
Okay, that's the quickest lap we've seen for a while. We saw Marcel Fessler in the number 5 Audi that's still top of the charts, now in the hands of Will Stevens do the 2.40. The 2.41 So the times are coming down. Who's going to be the next one? Is anyone going to go in the 203s? They're still down at the tail end of the top 30. Philippe Salicard with a 75 Audi. Still underachieved early on, but just chipping away, constantly going that little bit faster.
So there's the Porsche on the right of screen. Its last lap was a 2:14.5, not representative of the pace of the car earlier in the session when the track conditions were clearly much better than they are now. Maxime Martin, mega, behind the wheel of the BMW M6. So what can the Belgian pull out of the... I haven't seen this car, where is it?
27th fastest. 206.4, fairly competitive at this point, but as we've seen cars going to the 2-minute 4s.
Fairly normal kind of guy, really.
Well, go to South Africa, eat steak, that works.
Yeah.
You can play tennis if you want to listen to pop.
Yeah, pop, well, maybe that's just a catch-all phrase. So yeah, we'll stick with what Maxime's choices are.
Certainly less spray coming off these cars as we go in towards the final 20 minutes of this 90-minute session. Started with conditions slightly drier than this, but then it got really rather wet, and that's why we've had no improvement in overall lap times for quite some while. And whether the mark of 1 minute 58.3 set by the number 5 Audi in the hands of Dries van Tor will be beaten remains to be seen. I don't think we'll get close to that because it's the clock keeps on ticking, and as John said earlier, there's not enough heat to help dry this circuit.
The ambient would have dropped when the rain fell, so track temperature drop, ambient drop, no wind. That's the other thing. If you had a wind to blow a dog off a chain, that would be another contribution, but there's hardly the flags are all limp down the pit lane. Well, there's one making an effort, but that's the Italian flag. And
someone's shaking the lamppost.
Yes, maybe.
Flagpole. But yeah, conditions are improving, but I don't think they're going to improve fast enough. Top time 63 in the mix. That's the important thing. That's where it needs to be. It's 7th fastest. Okay, an interrupted session. Mirko's on board.
Getting back on board. So maybe the team think this is the time to put Mirko back in and see if they can make further improvements. That was a 2:4.01 from Valderaldi and Giosan.
Yeah, I think they just wanted Mirko out of the garage.
Yeah.
They didn't want his house music anymore. They can get it off the radio now.
So let's see what Giosan can do. This is regularly the quicker of the two cars, with the exception, on a couple of occasions, Matt Parry in the 22 car has been absolutely, I say, gotcha! Music EDM. Pizza Place Monaco. Will you live in Japan? Unless you're a resident. Maybe he's resident in Monaco.
Well, maybe he's chosen. Doesn't want to do the big commute, but he's going slowly down at the edge of the circuit there, waiting to get track position. There were gaggles of cars go by. I think actually I just spotted one. Was that his sister car just going through ahead? No, it wasn't. Sister car is... He's 13th and the sister car 18th, so better session than normal for the RJN Nissan team.
He's backed out.
He has backed out there as well.
Track space.
Okay, so that's going to accelerate in the 23 Nissan there. His best time nearly 2 seconds down on the ultimate pace, but for
conditions to mitigate when the surge of torque and power then come in to prevent wheel spin, braking traction, whatever.
And again, what we saw just looking through the windscreen on was it Chio-san? Oh no, it's Bentley.
It is a Bentley, I think, yes.
Down the slope.
British Racing Bentley. So, hop, skip and a jump through there. So the Bentley makes it into the pit lane. So free rein for Mirko Bortolotti to come through. 46.5 for... No, am I looking at? 47.
204.9, so that's a really competitive
Yeah.
time. We said if you're in the 204s, you're doing very well. 205, you're at the sharp end.
I would hope if he has a clear lap, that would see again a small improvement as we return to the 88.
Third fastest, but that time was set right in the early point in the session. But 88, of course, we saw in the gravel very briefly. And he went
Felix! That's a bit sort of courageous of you, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen a few people going out over the curbing over there.
There's Felix in all his glory, and isn't he Peruvian?
No, he's from Puerto Rico.
sort of on the right continent.
Yeah, you're heading the right way. You just went a bit far going all the way down to Peru.
Of course, everybody very concerned about
obviously
the
they had
damage
a really hard time.
The hurricanes that have blighted the Caribbean, and Puerto Rico getting heavily hammered in the process. So up the hill, our number 4 Mercedes down the hill, followed by the 88. So one's 3rd overall, the other's 15th overall. So Lucas Stoltz behind the wheel of the number 4.
Drivers still being remarkably wary of the curbing, and quite rightly so, because that still holds the most moisture. The 88 car somehow has yet to deliver the top result that we think that trio, very well-balanced driving trio, could and should deliver. But again, it just goes to show that the quality keeps on rising. The bar keeps on being lifted. Well, not quite there, but right there this weekend so far.
I mean, what we've seen is an influx of young blood, young talent that's really been ignored by the single-seater route, principally because of the ridiculous costs to enter into a single-seater championship. And they're coming in and they're bringing that vitality and that pace and all the excitement that youth brings to any race series.
Just fleetingly saw the 87 Pro-Am ACA car in the background. That's Davide Rigon, who's in the car that's 4th fastest. That time again was set a long while ago. 2 minutes 6.1 last time around, so sort of in the ballpark, semi-quick. The car in the background is the car that Jules Gounon's been so strong in. And
car
finally,
16.
Oh, well done. Marvin Kirchhoff, I said he was the quickest driver in the 16 Mercedes. We saw the car off the track. That's the first lap improvement we've had for about 15 minutes since 75.
Green. Personal best in each of the 3 sectors.
He's only gone 40th, in fairness.
Doesn't matter. It's a time, and it's a 2:5.556.
Whereas the fastest, well, one of the top car in the timesheets did 2 minute 5.2. So there we are, 39 positions further down the chart and lapping at a very similar pace to a car that's been top of the timesheets.
So the timesheets have basically, since the session got underway, an hour and 20 minutes ago, are virtually unchanged. And what has anybody learned?
Well, they've learned the way in and out of the pits. Most of the cars have had a whole host of pit stops. Of course, they wanted to change their drivers, but they wanted to change... when they worked out it wasn't just a little drizzle, it was becoming proper rain. That would have affected what they're doing. But even now, with the final 10 minutes, cars still entering and leaving the pit lane.
Well, what they've also learned is that depending on the ambient, the racetrack isn't going to dry as quickly as one would expect in Barcelona at this time of year. Now, if it's like this in the morning, the ambient will be even lower than it is now, so you can expect to have a wet qualifying session, which in itself is going to roll the dice for everybody.
And we're going qualifying at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, 9 till 9:20. So, sorry, 9 till 10, but it's got a couple of intervals in it. But as we see, it's not drying out quickly. The number 5 Audi, Benoit Trellier, still listed, that's the number 2, sorry, we're looking at with Ben Trellier, 5th fastest overall, whereas the sister car number 5 is fastest, but that car, again, looking very good in conditions. He's just winding up to speed. He did his outlap, and now he's starting to get, with a nice clear run from turn 9 at the top of the hill down the infield straight. He won't be troubled by traffic on this lap. But his first sector, fairly good time, nothing sensational though. Number 2 Audi, 5th fastest. So it's Audi from Porsche, from Mercedes, from Ferrari.
Without putting the commentator's curse on Benoit Trullier, but when you've got the experience, especially in long distance events, 24-hour races, it does teach you about when it's necessary to push and when it's not. I'm just watching what Trullier is doing, slightly over coming out of turn 14.
Well, he's got enough space ahead of him to experiment on this lap and really go for it on the following one.
Last lap was 3:42. This lap is going to be
2 minute 5, 2 minute 6. There we go.
So that was essentially an out lap. As we look into the Audi garage once again.
There's Robin Friens standing there, arms crossed. He's waiting for his go in the 17. At the moment, it's still down in 28th position, and Stuart Leonard's just brought that into the pit lane, so he'll be changing over, but with not a lot of time to go out and play.
Maxi
About 5 minutes.
Maxi Book in the copper-coloured 84 Mercedes, So that car last lap would have been his first lap back behind the wheel was a 2:13.9 in the midst of traffic, but Max Book, again a driver who was deeply disappointed with the outcome of his challenge in the Blancpain Sprint Cup 2 weekends ago at Nürburgring, retired, we believe, with something mechanical.
It's when you see a driver... okay, listen. Hold second down the hill.
Oh, Maxie, what do you do that for? I wanted to see how quick you were going to go at the end of this lap, but mainly through turn 16.
But it was interesting listening to just how much of a clonk it comes back into the cockpit when you thump the first part of the chicane.
That's transmission snatch that you're hearing. So, you know, there's quite a lot of lash in the transmission, and sometimes if you snap off and on the throttle, that's when you get that lash. Yeah,
so
100 lashes, sort them out.
For you, there you go. So the 16 car, that was set to make an improvement on its 40th position. It's only gone up one place, but it was improving its time. And again, on that lap, it was looking better. Marvin Kirchhoff, but he has hopped out. And I think the taller figure getting on board the 16 is Miguel Toril. I do Oliver Morley's relatively tall, but...
well, Ollie is tall, but I think maybe he's had his
run.
Day in the rain, and with what, just 6 minutes now of the session to go as the 84 just cruise check the torque.
Just remember to take that little
on the
thing out from underneath.
Nuts.
Dolly trolley will be removed. So still that number 5 Audi at the top of the field.
I haven't seen much of this all day.
No, we saw it being removed from the track early on. It seemed to pull off into turn 7, listed as having spun in the hands of Marco Ciocci, but it says 0-0 on the windscreen, which suggests no time has been accredited thus far. But we know it's a car that's got plenty of potential. The 55 Kaspersky Motorsport, run by AF Corsa, Marco Ciocci, Giancarlo Fisichella and James Collado. And of course that was a car that went very, very well in the Spa 24 hours.
It did.
And I walked out in the morning to get a quick bite of breakfast, and the shoulders were down on Giancarlo as he was slouching away. Big interview in the magazines this week in Autosport, and just his love of racing and love of racing a Ferrari, combine those two things, and doesn't like being at home so much. He'd rather be out in that.
And never forget ka-ching.
Ka-ching.
A bit of pocket money to subsidise or underwrite whatever he's left of his Formula One fortune.
Yeah, but it's great to have drivers with a story to tell like Giancarlo. So out on the track, the car. We will have to see what they do in qualifying tomorrow morning. It's a very quick fire. We don't know what the track conditions are going to be. It's improving the weather here after an incredibly grey afternoon at the Circuit de Catalunya. We don't expect to see many improvements in time in the final 5 minutes of this 90-minute session. All the quick times came very early on, but how representative the order is we have, because some who stayed in the garage, like the 7 and 8 Bentleys, didn't get to set a time when the track was relatively dry. They've been playing catch-up ever since, and they're not, either of them, in the top 40.
I think teams now just really running down. There's only 4 minutes to go. Not a huge amount that they're going to learn, and some trying to keep out of the way, and others going the long way around. So
the morning session was all about Mercedes. We've got 2 of them in the top 8 this afternoon, but 6 of the top 8 this morning were Mercedes, and they held down the top 4 positions ahead of the best of the challengers, the better of the challengers, the 63 Lamborghini. That's in the mix this afternoon, 7th fastest as well, but as you can see, traffic and everything is in the way.
There's the Aston Martin coming up behind them. The Mercedes down into turn 1, pulls wide one way, then cuts back. So who's behind the wheel of 97, looking to see where it is?
It's Johnny Adam.
Johnny Adam again. So he is actually not the leading Pro-Am driver. They are 1, 2, 3, 4. They're 5th currently in the Pro-Am class.
But much like this morning, the second place car in the timesheets is a Pro-Am car. This morning it was the 87 Jules Gounon, Jean-Luc Bobelic, Maurice Ritchie Mercedes. This afternoon it's the Alfred Renauer, Robert Renauer and Jürgen Hering Porsche.
Indeed it is. And that again is, I believe, entirely due to the configuration of the Porsche, just the circumstances of the racetrack, grip levels, weight distribution, and excellent bit of driving that put that car second quickest.
So the number 3 Audi not in the top 10, but just outside, in the hands at the moment of John Venter. Haven't seen so much of that in the session. He's sharing that with Clément Mathieu and Josh Cahill. John Venter, the Aussie. Out over the curves, but luckily for him, not beyond. Just actually had an improvement. Someone in the top 40 has improved, not their position, but their time. Martin Kodrick in the 77 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. 2 cars entered by the British team. He's sharing that this weekend with Patrick Kugler, who we saw at the start of the session, and Hunter Abbott, who's been racing and I believe leading
British
with
GT.
Maxi Book. British GT, but also the Blancpain GT Series Asia, the Group M Mercedes.
Pierre Dudonné and Thierry Tassin on the WRT pit. Well, hello, Pierre. Anyway, great Belgian drivers from earlier ages. Pierre and I, a similar seniority. Thierry a little bit younger.
Mighty Mouse, as Thierry was known.
A couple of greens
but they're
popping up.
Yeah, down the 37th, 38th, 39th positions. They were the only ones likely to have an improvement. Suddenly, 75. Check-on jumps about 8 places up to 30th. So that 75 ISR Audi, you know, they've been going for it. They didn't get a quick time early on.
That's
but
the first time somebody this afternoon in these conditions has broken the 2:04. That's
yeah.
the 3.5. So,
yeah.
other than what we saw in the first 8-10 minutes, that's the first time somebody's done a 2:03. So that's a good run by the 75 Audi.
Yeah. All 3 of the drivers in that car, Philippe Salacada and also Frank Stippler, were at the wet points. They were one of the fastest cars out there. So the car clearly suits changing conditions. But we're into the final minute. 1 or 2 Jaguars. That's the number 114. That's the less well-placed one. That's Jonathan Hershey in 22nd position overall. Still looking for grip. And the 14 car.
Sister car coming onto pit straight.
Yeah, that's 16th fastest overall. Alex Fontana at the wheel, Swiss racer. 2 minute 4.8. So the times are suddenly starting to get down to the quickest laps we've seen. Quicker end of the slow speed we have.
Into the last half minute, so those cars that are still, well, some will be competing a lap. Let's look at the 55. We haven't seen very much of this car all afternoon, let alone through the morning.
Still
so it's
0-0.
going to get across the start-finish line. Might just get one more lap in. If it comes onto that bridge before the checkered flag, it's going to be close. 4, 3. He might do.
Just did it. 9th fastest at the moment. There's the checkered flag. So one more lap for Marco Ciocci. They were certainly short on time this morning, but the 55 car in the mix right now. Quite a lot of the runners just reporting into the pits. We will have some more improvements to tail end. Yasemin Jafar in the 59 McLaren.
Haven't seen anything of him at all.
No, they were 45th last time we saw, up to 37th.
What's the number 4 going to do? Lucas Stoltz was behind the wheel. I don't know who it is.
It is still Lucas Stoltz, 15th fastest at the moment. I think we might see. I don't think the ones on the front page are going to improve their lap times.
Lap, so 3:23 doesn't count.
Only be those in the second screen. Suddenly got Thomas Enger getting that the Lamborghini Gallardo right at Youngstars just into the top 40. So all those years of experience. 2 minute 5.1. So
That's
good lap.
job. That's, I mean, a car that is by age, you know.
And the McLaren's also coming good, because suddenly the 42 McLaren in the hands of David Fuminelli goes up to do a 2 minute 3.9. So yes, the track really another 5-10 minutes, and we start to see the front page, the timing screen, the top 20 starting to be effective.
2:04.8 for the 25 lap, or 66, I should say, Lamborghini. So that's a good run. 2:04.8.
Haven't seen so much of the 50 Ferrari.
There it is,
completing.
Wow. 2:03.2.
Wow, coming very.
That's quickest lap in these conditions.
Yeah, that was Pierguidi, Alessandro Pierguidi.
Not surprised at all.
And the 14, Alex Fontana, driven Jaguar, completes the session. 36, running in the AM class, Walk and Horse Motorsport. 48th. Well, possibly just improved their time, if not their position, but not into our timing screens. So the session was affected by rain. Those who set their times early on in the first, what were we talking about, 4 laps, are the ones that are at the top of the charts. Marco Ciocci, can he improve? He was the last driver to start the final lap. Did a 2 minute 5.5, 2 minute 4.7. So yeah, conditions improving. What did we learn? We learned the Audi seemed quite well balanced, but if you want to average it across the 2 sessions, the 88 Mercedes was 3rd this morning for Vautier Sarais and Juncadella, and 3rd again. The Porsche was good when the conditions were wet before they became super wet. But we got almost all the cars out and almost all the cars back.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tough session for everybody. There's a lesson to be learned because conditions tomorrow in qualifying could be not dissimilar to where we are now, so that's the benefit of going out. But everybody, Berghoff.
That's the number 5 Audi, fastest of all in the session, but all 3 of its drivers set competitive times. So let's take a look at the timesheets, and there it is. 1 minute 58.369 seconds. So really a blink of an eye faster than the Herbert Motorsport Porsche. And those in behind that, 88 Mercedes, 3rd in the morning, 3rd in the afternoon, looking very strong. SMP Racing, Ferrari, 4th fastest, and 5th, another car from the Belgian Audi Club, Team WRT camp. Ericsson, Buch and Pereira right in the mix in the 84 Mercedes as well. So conditions were difficult. Drivers generally stayed on the black stuff, but they soon learned not to go out over the curbing. And not too many spins, but it really was frustrating. Another 10 minutes as the track dried out. We might have seen a few cars on the front page of the timing screen make their moves. The McLarens were coming good towards the end, but they've been outside the top 40. Stracker Racing 33 was the last improvement. The 42 car moved up to 33rd position, so a lot to go for. Qualifying starts at 9 o'clock Central European time on tomorrow. That's Sunday morning, and this is the final race, the 10th and final round of the 2017 Blancpain GT Series, and we do not yet know who will be champion in the Endurance Cup. This is the 5th and final endurance round, or the overall honours. It's very close. It's between the number 8 Bentley crew and the 63 Lamborghini crew. And 8 Bentley crew didn't set a time. There it is. Well, they did right at the early part of the sessions. They sat in the garage, 49th fastest out of 50. But I think we can almost throw that away. But there is the possibility of rain. And look how wet it was on the outlap. Jules Gounon looking as though he was going ice racing at various points of the circuit, really throwing his car around with abandon. And then I think they worked out that maybe treaded tyres were the way to go. And the 77 Lamborghini also very spectacular in the hands of Patrick Couillard. Traffic always an issue. And trying to find your space on the circuit, and also trying to find where later as the track dried where the moisture was less. So tyres kept on being changed. The 63 Lamborghini crew trying to gauge what conditions would be, as was that 88 car in the hands of Daniel Juncadella. And then the 82, one of the 3 Brassa Lamborghinis getting beat. That was removed and got back onto the circuit, and conditions kept on changing. For a while they were getting wetter, and then they gradually started to dry out. And at this point we're looking at in the highlights, you can see that was the full wet point on the circuit. Going out of the curbing is not where you want to be, because the painted edges to the circuit, very slippery indeed. It's a battlefield out there, it says on the flanks of the 84 HTP Motorsport Mercedes. Take wide in and then tight on the exit. Towards the end, the McLaren started coming forward. The 59 car, Jasmine Jaffar, starting to improve. Still something to smile about in the Bentley M Sport pits, but 88 Mercedes, 3rd yesterday, 3rd today. They should have a big smile on their face. What the weather will be tomorrow. The number 5 crew, they're fastest. They'll be hoping for the wet.